New books from Our Daddy in November. The Magic Order, American Jesus and Prodigy.
Coming in January, Nemesis Reloaded. It looks so nasty.
Art by Jorge Jimenez. Before that is Nightclub in December by Mark Millar and Juanan Ramirez. Do you think comics are too expensive? So do we. Every issue, just $1.99.
Hey folks, welcome to Millar Time. Tonight's special guest is Brian Michael Bendis, a great pal of mine going back over 20 years. He came up through the American indie scene back in the 90s and he blew everybody away at Marvel with Ultimate Spider-Man. Went on to do the Avengers, X-Men, Daredevil, Secret Invasion, all these huge books. Co-created Miles Morales, Jessica Jones, Riri Williams, Powers, Jinx, Scarlet, all this great stuff. Then recently over at DC doing Superman, Justice League. Listen, he's a busy guy. We're very lucky to have him. Brian, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Do you know, not too bad. Not too bad at all. It's been quite hard to pin you down because I know you're a busy guy. It's been hard to get you. And you gave me the weirdest excuse I've ever heard the other night. I said, right, can we do Thursday night? And you said, I can't. I'm going to see Kelly Sue DeConnick's Vegas show. And I was like, what the? I thought you were making it up and then I Googled it and it's actually real.
It's been that kind of month. It's been particularly after a pandemic of not leaving this chair for a couple of years. I've been traveling to very weird places. I went to the Wakanda premiere, which is the first premiere I've been to in a long, long time. I got to take my daughters, and you've had that experience as well. And then Kelly, I don't know how it's been for you during the pandemic. A lot of the people in my circle took huge swings. Like, all right, we can't count on any of this,
right?
So they took some big swings, and recently a lot of those big swings have landed. Like a lot of the work that went in during the pandemic has come out, and one of the biggest was Kelly Sue got offered to be part of. It's kind of like you want to say Cirque du Soleil so people have context for it, but it is not that. It is a multimedia. It's closer to stuff I saw when I was at the campus of MIT, where there was just like immersive displays and all kinds of theatrical daring do that you haven't seen yet. It's a brand new show. Like it's the newest, hottest Vegas thing. And it's all narrated by Anthony Hopkins. So Kelly Sue has like all of her words being spoken by, the voice you'd want anyone to say your words.
That's the voice I want in my head, just for what I see day to day. That's so cool. I love that.
So it was just dazzling. And also Kelly came from theater. Like that was her entryway into comics. So for her to leave theater and then come back to theater at the highest level was kind of amazing to watch.
That is amazing. So what's the show called?
Called Awakenings. It's at the Wynn Hotel. It's on sale now. If you're in Vegas, the best comic book stores in America, some of them are there. So, head on over.
Because you guys all moved to Portland, didn't you? I mean, you've got Matt Fraction, Kelly Sue. Did Brubaker move to Portland as well? Is he?
No, he's somewhere always on the coast, but no, we've never been in the same city.
But I kind of see it like the Monkeys, that you guys are all in one house and you've got
down
for breakfast and everything. Is it like that? Is that what it's like?
Yes, yeah, we all live in this. It's like the Real World, MTV 1989. No, it's actually hilariously, we now Kelly, Sue, and Matt and our families live very close together geographically. So it is as closer to what people imagined. But for years, we were just in different parts of the city and whatnot. But Portland is a kind of a comic book mecca. Yeah. There are an insane amount of creators here. You bump into them all the time at supermarkets and stuff, like buying the weirder stuff. It's it's exactly what
how did who was the first one to go and pioneer this?
Oh, it goes way past like us. It was that way in the 90s. McFarlane used to live here back in the day.
Is that why Image Comics is up there? Yeah, is that?
Yeah, Image is here. Dark Horse is here. Top Shelf, Oni, IDW. There's all kinds of like.
Really?
Yeah, at least a home office of some sort. Yeah,
That's incredible. See,
I
because I'm in a different country and always have been, I just think of it as all America. You know, I don't realize where these places are. I just speak to them on the phone. I had no idea everything was in pretty much one place. That's like the new New York.
Well, no, it all kind of moved here over the pandemic. There was like, what happened was, and Marvel actually did this years ago too. Like, well, instead of flying you all here, why don't we just come to you? It'd be cheaper to come to you. and I think there's some of that going on as well. And
so who do you hang around with then? Like, who's your kind of comic?
Well,
who's the squad?
My children, number one, and my wife, and Matt and Kelly, and are the number ones. But we have Mike Oming and Taki Soma are here.
Cool.
And Mike,
I didn't know Mike.
My oldest. Yeah, he's in Vancouver, and Nick Darrington, who is an artist. I'm not sure you're familiar with his work. He's amazing. I
love Nick Darrington. He's absolutely brilliant. He and I've been talking for about a year, but like I love his stuff. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, we did Batman together at DC and became.
I love that. Yeah, it was great.
Fast friends. Yeah, so like some projects you just do it, and that was fun. Thanks for doing that. And sometimes you're like, oh, we're pals now.
Yes.
So so that was cool about that. And so yeah, it's Steve Lieber's here. I mean, it's amazing amount of people. It goes on and on and on. Greg Rucka is also here. Yeah. He's been in Italy filming Old Guard 2. Another one of my friends is like, okay, that's what you do now. Yeah. So that's what's been going on.
David and Mike and yourself, like you couldn't meet in the comic book industry. There's always a little bit of bitching about something, but you guys, nobody ever bitches about you guys. Like I always think everybody likes you.
That's not true.
Really? Is this like? Do you remember when we were having breakfast with Jeff Johns one time, and we said to him, Jeff, you never seem to get any hassle online. You just seem to be like everybody likes you. And Jeff nearly flew across the table. He was like, "What? It's just that we don't see it, I guess, But I always feel like you guys are very likable guys. You never get into Twitter spats and all this nonsense and everything. You just seem to enjoy what you do. You like hanging out. Just live a normal life.
No, it's funny that you say that, because that moment. When he said that was a big revelation for me. That freed me.
Yeah.
from some of the online stress at a time that I needed it. So that was very good. No, because sometimes it always feels like it's on you.
Yeah.
You open up your internet, and I know like boo-hoo you authors with people who follow you, but if something strikes someone they don't like, it feels like you're being attacked by all. Yeah, and that's not it. It's always,
I hope nobody ever attacks Oming. Like Oming's like the world's nicest man, isn't he? Like, I hope everybody's just lovely to Oming online.
Yeah, no one gives David or Mike any shit. It's. But also listen. I was thinking about it, like when you asked for me to come on, and I look back on who we were when we both, we kind of grabbed each other's hands on Thelma and Louise and entered this nonsense together, and I said we were put together like a boy band almost.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. But both of us came in like little devilly, we were little snarky assholes everywhere we could be. And it was kind of it was part of the formula of what got us where we were going, is that we were really meant our stories, and we're really into every part of the comic book industry, but we were also little snarky little indie assholes. And with that, and now when I look back and look at any of that material, I'm like, oh, who the hell are you? I'm just just shitting all over everybody. And so there are people who, as we were coming up, we absolutely pissed off, and they have absolutely totally not forgiven us. And nor should they, by the way.
Yeah.
If I see any of it, I want to apologize to anybody, but it's ridiculous.
But it was we were doing I'd never been to New York. The day we met was the first time I'd ever been to New York. I'd never even.
That's true.
And I didn't have a credit card. I remember I didn't have a credit card, and it was really cold. And Joe Quesada went out and bought me a jacket because I had a really thin jacket.
I remember that.
And I just
take us to some jacket store.
Yeah, it was. I'd been in California. I'd been out in San Diego. And on the way back, whenever I met you guys, I thought America was just America. This is going to sound so idiotic to everyone, but I just thought, well, if the weather's okay in San Diego, it's probably pretty good in New York as well. Because Scotland's kind of like that because it's so small, you know? So I was like, yeah, it's pretty hot, so I'm not going to bother, you know, taking a warm jacket or a jumper or anything. And I showed up and I nearly died. I looked like a maniac. I was just shaking. And Joe was like, we need to get you, you know, get a leather jacket. And he took me out. It was like Pretty Women. He took me to this store and bought me a warm winter outfit. You know?
No, I believe I was with you, and I got one too. I think like they knew someone with a jacket store or something.
We got a really good discount, didn't we, as well?
Yes, I remember thinking, "Oh, I like discounts." So this is yeah.
But it felt like The Sopranos, didn't it? Like Joe just came out with a roll of notes, and he was buying us clothes and everything. And I thought, I'm going to enjoy working at Marvel. This is going to be great.
No, I remember that first retreat, and I was talking to that Fraction about it just the other day because it feels like there is some kind of like play to write or something, like there's some kind of narrative to do, because like if Sorkin was doing it, it would be like 3 acts, and the first act would be all at the first retreat, which was me, you, CB, Joe at a coffee table in the break room, remember? Right. Yeah, it was like we were all like all huddled around the table but a lot happened at that table, like a lot, like basically the entirety of the Ultimate Universe. And you said Marvel Zombies for the first time. I remember that at that table, at least the first time I heard it.
That was years later, actually. Marvel Zombies, I didn't bring that up until about 2004 or 2005. That was
oh, really?
Off, actually, yeah. Because I remember coming up with it on the plane. It's all smashing into one, you know. Yeah,
absolutely. Exactly what's happened. And then like the second act would be like the bigger retreat, like the new Avengers retreat, where you and I were doing our nonsense. And then the third one would be the Civil War retreat. Like it feels like there's 3 acts there of just like unfolding a story about pop culture, but I don't know what it is.
Oh, the third act has got to be us in 30 years' time, when we're disgracing ourselves, you know, with our bad pitches under our arm and everything, you know. So 5th marriage, all that kind of stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm. No, it's about Miles Morales's anyway. So yeah, but I will say I'm also proud of us for stepping off the train at a point. Like you stepped off probably right on time. Your sense of timing was better than mine, but I am glad that I stayed as long as I did because of what I got to do. But you know, you never know when to go. It's like I always like equate it to like our careers to like those who work on Saturday Night Live. Like, you're supposed to go there, make the most of it, do your best, you know, and then you have to leave at some point, or stay as long as Kenan Thompson. Like you like, it's up to you, or your what you want. And so I think about that a lot, like when to go, when not to go. So yeah, I'm and some people who don't go, and you're like, oh, you should go. Like, go.
But it is fun too. You can see the attraction, you know.
Oh, totally.
You're 5 years old, you want to work at Marvel Comics, you know. But for me, I mean, Disney coming in, I could see coming in the distance, and I could smell trouble. I thought, this is probably not a good environment for me. But weirdly, I was desperate to do my creator own stuff and to do Millar Worlds. And I was trying to do it when I was at Marvel, but I'm quite a slow writer, you know. So I just kept taking on Marvel assignments and sort of doing my Millar World stuff in the background. And I just had to go for it, you know. I had to jump off at that point. But I mean, if you had left at that time, we'd have missed out on so many huge books that you did. It'd have been a tragedy if you'd left in 2009, because I think you'd so much more Marvel in you. You know, you grew up with Marvel.
I didn't want to go. When Bagley left, I gave it a great deal of thought. Like that was, you know, Bagley hopped off to DC after a few years, and I went, oh shit, should I leave? Like that felt like, and then when you left, I gave it a lot of thought. And Ed too. With Ed, I have a history with, we broke into comics together at Caliber Comics 30 years ago. Literally the same week was me, him, Michael Lark. We all had a books debut like the same month at Caliber. That's and Ed was writing and drawing. Like Ed drew his own books in the beginning. Called Low Life. He had a real like Seth kind of feel, like a little Palookaville, you know, like real indie 90s autobiographical, you know, like I did too. And but there would be this history of Ed just up and leaving, and me going, where the fuck did he go? And then 2 weeks later, everything falls apart, and I'm like, oh boy, Ed was right. So and after like 30 years of that, every time Ed does something, I pay like hyper attention to what's happening, because
so those dogs with earthquakes, isn't it? The dogs that can smell an earthquake coming. Maybe he's one of those guys. You know?
He does. Of all of us, have incredible intuition, not only with his moves, but like with formats. Like when he switched to graphic novels, I like what graphic novels? How are we doing now? Like so I do think he's of us very intuitive. So when Ed left, I took it very seriously as well. But and in my heart I was like, no, not yet, not time yet. And then when Joe elevated, I was like, oh, okay, I should leave. And like, yeah,
elevated sounds like he passed away. Can I just stress he's still alive? You know,
he ascended.
When Joe ascended to heaven, you know.
I was sad you weren't at his 60th. I know that's quite a huff.
I haven't been to America for a while, actually. You know, like since the pandemic, actually, I haven't been out. But like, I kind of can't believe Joe's 60. I remember his 40th. Do you remember when we started? It was Joe's 40th, and I like.
Well, I just missed his 40th, but I was at his 50th. Matt and Kelly were at his 40th. That's what we talked about. Yeah, so that's and then for the 60th, like they flew, like we went to Sun Valley where Joe had his thing, and you can see it on my Instagram if you want to see. It was
I'll have a look. It was quite a concert. Joe looks about 45. He's got those beautiful Cuban genes.
Yeah, he hasn't aged.
He never changes at all, doesn't he? That's crazy.
Yeah, we have a couple of friends who haven't aged at all, and a couple of friends who have aged shockingly. I'm so grateful because Jon Stewart has aged a great deal, and he went online and gave a big speech about how Jews age and that you can't judge us, we just age. And I was so grateful, because it doesn't like, hey, why am I melting? And oh, okay, it's in the genes.
But then Stan Lee looked amazing when Stan was 96 or whatever. I mean, Stan looked like a 65-year-old, you know.
He did.
He was Scottish, he'd be, you know, he'd have been 65 looking like that.
No, I will say, and you and I both had the opportunity to communicate with him privately, you know, the not, you know, there's Stan the man, and then there's Stan the actual man, and we got to meet both of them. And the one thing I took away was not so much the looks, because, you know, there's the hair and whatever he was doing, and it's LA, who knows what he was doing, but the energy level and the sharpness was I was very envious of it, and I literally said, oh, please, God in heaven, please let me keep my facilities.
But you look at these guys though, like Ditko, Jerry Robinson, you know, they get into their 90s, and I think so much of it is they love what they're doing, don't they? I mean, Ditko was still drawing comics a page a day or whatever, you know, in that little apartment they had in New York in his 90s for himself. He was just doing it for himself. And I think that keeps you going, doesn't it? I mean, I think that's the root of everything, isn't it? To just enjoy getting up in the morning, and we're doing the dream job, aren't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Our base level of stress is so less than others, and I try to really celebrate that. Not to brag about it, but just remind myself, if I'm feeling stressed about something, like you go, hey, you know, worst day, look what you did all day, you know. And but a friend of mine who's a doctor actually pointed out that we're very lucky that we're pretty much doing puzzle work all day. We're keeping the brain sharp, just by what the job entails, which is putting all the pieces of a story together and thinking about it from all the different angles. Like we're pretty much doing Wordle all day, but on a high level, and that does keep things sharp. So I am grateful for that. That was in lieu of it happening physically, it happens mentally. So that's nice.
Maybe our brain is the portrait of Dorian Gray sort of thing. The brain is still young, you know. Maybe that's what.
Do you like? We are now of an age. This I wanted to talk to you about. We're of an age where we are now perceived as elder statesmen by some people in the industry, which is fucking weird because I don't feel that at all. Other than when people talk to me that way, but I have the same thing with my kids. I'm like, oh, I'm your father. Shit, I got like you see a parent. I have to, you know. So I find myself acting the part of the responsible adult, and having to remind myself what, like, I'm 55. What 55 sounded like to me when I was 22.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Like I remember meeting creators for 55 going, Jesus Christ, they're about to turn to dust, like that. And so, but now that we're this age, you realize, no, not yet. We're still, it's all there still, but you do remember. I remember thinking, what in the Dark Knight Returns, that I think Batman was 50 or 55.
He was 55 at the end. He turned out to be 55. Yeah.
Right. And then I remember thinking that was the most insane thing in that story, that someone
that blew my mind.
Yeah, someone have physical ability at 55, and you're like, no, that's very funny.
But it's, I mean, it's still 6 years younger than Tom Cruise, so like, just think of that.
Yeah. But, I do walk around the house old manning my kids about Tom Cruise. He's gonna die on that spaceship.
Well, I'm 52 now, and I always think of myself in relation to James Bond's, so I'm sort of Roger Moore in this less good last 3 movies now, I'm sort of hitting that point, I think I'm just past Moonraker. I'm sort of just over Moonraker now, heading into on her, what was it, For Your Eyes Only? I'm heading into For Your Eyes Only now. Or Earth 2 Superman. Earth 2 Superman was 49. And I'm now 3 years older than Earth 2 Superman, the retired Superman, which seems awful. But, here's a weird thing, right? We've been friends for over 20 years, 22 years. And, when men talk, they usually just talk about stuff, don't they? Like men never, I'm always amazed in lockdown. I saw my wife talking to her friends and they were asking each other how they were. And it was like real human stuff, Whereas men just crack jokes and say facts, don't they? I mean, that's all. I know nothing about my friends, guys I've known my whole life, I don't know what's going on. So weirdly, I actually don't know much about you growing up, like your family and everything.
We've actually, you and I have talked about it.
Really? I mean, I don't know what your mom and dad did for a living.
Years ago, we were connecting the dots between how you were raised in Scotland and again, you may have been drunk, but
there's a fair chance if it was after 11 a.m. There's possibly, But
in New York, late at night, you and I had a conversation about the similarities between growing up in Cleveland and growing up in Scotland, because I think we were both quite fascinated but weirded out about how we ended up where we were. Like we ended up where we wanted. Yeah, we wanted.
Even culturally, were your family into comics, movies, all that kind of stuff? I mean,
no.
So how did it happen for you? Who was the springboard?
I discovered them early, and I'm actually thrilled to talk to you about this. I actually just completed an autobiographical graphic novel where I cover a lot of this. That'll be on my Substack and then at Dark Horse, and it's you'll like it. It's called Fortune and Glory the Musical, and I did a book years ago called Fortune and Glory, which is about how I don't understand Hollywood and what the hell. So in this one, the wraparound is about how I was the writer of the Spider-Man Broadway musical for 2 weeks for Julie Taymor, like years before the show actually got made.
I've got this written down. I wanted to talk to you about this. That's so bizarre, right?
So I used that as the basis of which for me to tell an autobiographical look back at all this. So I have it pretty fresh on my mind. But no, I discovered comics very early, like really, really early. I was not hard and now at this stage, I can look back and go, oh, didn't have a father, was reading these to fill a void. And then I know I was reading them for entertainment, but then found, oh, I want to do this. Like I chart the day I discovered the little boxes in the front. I'm like, oh, this is someone's job. Then it'll be my job. And then I stood up at the dining room table and like at 6 years old and announced that I was going to be the artist of Spider-Man, because I had just discovered what those words were. Like I didn't actually know what any of it meant, but I called it. Like I and my mom years later, my mom lives here in Portland too, and she had said to me, she goes, do you remember, like you like Babe Ruth, you aimed at it and without any knowledge of like how you were going to get there or what it entailed or what the real world was like. And so I was all in at a very early age, and I just got to work. Honestly, very early.
And like movies, but did your mom take you to the cinema and everything? Were you kind of?
Oh yeah. And again, like I was 10 years old when Star Wars came out, so I'm that kid. So from between Star Wars to Back to the Future is like 8 years of Spielberg. Like it, like I equate it to, like the MCU has something out every 3 months now. So did Spielberg. Like it was stuff he directed, but then there was Goonies, Gremlins, Back to the Future, at least how it felt, where we were inundated with what was a Spielberg verse, right? of imagination and genre and material. So yeah, I was all in on all of it.
Spielberg kind of
Indiana
produced our
Jones,
childhood, didn't he? I mean, Spielberg was the producer of our childhood, essentially, wasn't he? Like all of your childhood cinematic memories, his name was somewhere on that poster, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast called Unspooled, and they were one of the hosts was actually talking about how she was actually like annoyed that Spielberg was like such a huge, like it was unavoidable, like she had no choice but to have him control the imagination of her childhood, and she wondered what would have my life have been, what would have my other interests have been if not for the constant Spielberging going on. And I see that going on with our kids now with the MCU, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty great. This is where we're in the middle of one of those eras where everything will be pointed to this is the most important thing. So
it's funny, the only guy I heard who missed the whole Spielberg thing was a guy called Jason Solomons, and he's an excellent film critic in England. And he said to me that when everybody else was going to see Star Wars, he begged his mum to take him to Annie Hall. And he really got... and he's some parallel Earth version of the rest of us, where he get into like Woody Allen movies and all that kind of stuff, which I love.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No, so between that and what was going on in comics, and I unpacked this a lot. Some of it wasn't fair, almost like by the time I discovered comics had discovered themselves, and like all through my high school was the ascension of Frank Miller and what he had done to the industry. And I point, from my perspective, it felt like just his existence lit a fire under everyone's ass for like 15 years. Like it just like it never ended. And a big memory for me is a convention in 1982. I get dropped off by myself, hanging out downtown, and Gil Kane is there, and Bob Wyacek. I mean, just like it, and the biggest books at the time were the Ronin had just come out, and Giffen's Legion, Giffen and Levitz's Legion, and the whole show was just like a shrine to them. And I was so lucky, and I did tell you this when we were younger, but the first person that I got an art lesson from was Gil Kane. He was teaching a seminar. He was teaching a seminar at for extra $20 you can go to the Gil Kane seminar. And I was so young, I didn't even know who he was. Like I knew he was the guy who drew the Sword of the Atom miniseries, because that's what was out, and that he was in Justice League 200 because that was the greatest comic book I'd ever read. I think you and I agree on that. And so there he was, and he was teaching us, and he was all full of piss and vinegar and basically yelling at us like Robert McKee, and that's in my memory at least. And one of the other kids in the class said, "Excuse me, Mr. King, what do you think about Frank Miller?" And he just got like fire in his eyes, and just turned around on this big sheet of paper behind him. He furiously drew. He goes, "Yeah, so I'll show you." And he drew a horse, and he goes, "I think that's what a horse looks like. That's what a horse looks like." And I didn't understand what was going on because A, Frank Miller is God to me. B, Frank Miller draws awesome horses. Like he just does.
He really does good horses.
Yeah, he does. And I'm like, "Oh, you're jealous." I didn't have a father, so I didn't have any male any energy. So I was processing, oh, this is what it looks like when a man's irrationally jealous of another man,
And it's a hard thing, isn't it? Because one generation seeing the replacements coming in is difficult, isn't it? So Richard Pryor, I heard, would walk out of clubs if he saw Eddie Murphy coming into the club. He was not happy because although they had everything in common and they would probably get on great, this was the guy who was replacing them in the cover of magazines, So I never knew that. So Gil Kane felt that way about Frank Miller. And it's funny because...
At least in the moment, at least in the moment. And, there's all these stories about Gil and,
but it's funny because it doesn't work the other way, doesn't it? Because the younger guy always loves the older guy, don't they? Because we grew up with those guys, so we are to actually meet them is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, but you and I both had the experience of having some people be unbelievably kind to us, and generous and warming and welcoming, literally welcome to comics, and it's really the only way I felt like I was in comics is that a couple of people had literally put their arm around me and said, "Come on in."
Which is comics in general, I think. I would say that's probably most people's experience, because if somebody likes comics, they kind of like to find somebody else who's into them, don't they? And I think it's a very encouraging job generally, isn't it?
Well, I also think you and I we got to a place where we can just enjoy our space.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't want to speak for you, but I do see you treating other creators in a way that says that you don't have any anxiety about your place in all of this. And that's where when people start getting irritable around others, they're unhappy with themselves. And so what I do like I think of the people who made me feel good coming in, and I try to do that as often as I can.
Yeah.
Like basically I've said this for like decades, but be Walt Simonson. Like just be Walt Simonson. Just do that.
Yeah.
Just be that person. Whereas, and also like we came up, there was quite a handful of like, hey dude, what's your problem? Creators and that were not happy to see us. And I was always like, why I'm here? Why you be happy to see me? Oh, because I'm taking your job. Okay. So I'm grateful for those who we get to discover. Also for the people who are treating us that way, I'm like, oh, don't do that. This is what it feels like. I mean, I get it from their perspective and all that, but there's no reason to treat other creators who are trying to make their own thing. But now that we're older, it's weird to see younger creators who are competitive, just in a competitive mode with everything. And you're like, hey, dude, I'm not, enjoy it, man. Just do your Batman, have fun, that part's always interesting because I can't engage with it. I just look at it. I just go, oh, look at you. You're all aggressive.
But like you say, I mean, our lives are in nice places and everything, so we're maybe more relaxed about it too, seeing 20-somethings coming through. And
I know we an enormous amount of privilege has been offered to us, and I know that. So what I try to do is like use that time well, like I teach and try to like give back anywhere we can. That's And
it's funny, like I mean, you were like me, you spent your 20s outside the mainstream, doing indie stuff and everything. And then it clicked for you, didn't it? You were doing some stuff at Image, you were doing your Jinx World stuff and everything. And then suddenly you're doing Ultimate Spider-Man, I always wondered if David Mack was already working with Joe. Was David Mack the guy who introduced you to Joe, or was Joe already
100%?
It was David then, yeah.
Yeah, David. Yeah, David got the call way before, and David and Joe had met at a convention just as like peers. Remember, like we always forget. Like I was a huge fan of Joe, huge fan.
Oh, Joe's amazing.
And then it was always weird to be hired by someone you're such a huge fan of because you want to balance the like you're awesome, and I really think that so. So no, David got in. And Joe was already thinking outside the box. Like he hired David to write Daredevil, not paint Daredevil. Yes. And immediately you just like, oh, he sees in David what I know is in David. I want to I immediately wanted to go over there, but I had, so many submissions and false starts and almost and maybes. And at one time, me and Mark Paniccia were going to do Spider-Woman over at Marvel West Coast when they were publishing things, and then Marvel West Coast disappeared. I'm like, oh, back of the line I go. And so I had quite a few false starts at Marvel and DC, which I'm grateful for now because it did callous me up for things that I needed to be ready for.
Oh, you need the knocks, don't you, to toughen you for the actual job when it comes,
Yeah. It does. And you're more grateful for it when it comes, and you're just more, you're in the right headspace for it. Yeah. Like there are times where I think earlier in my career where I was so hungry to break in. Yeah. But I would have blown it if I did. I would have not made the most of it.
That's the most amazing observation, to have that self-awareness, because I didn't have that, and I remember when I was 22, 23 thinking, okay, I should be doing the Avengers.
Oh yeah, no, at the time I did not have it.
And my career would have been 6 months long. I'd have been hated and thrown out of the industry, I mean, you get in at the time you're ready to get in, really, don't you?
Well, and also I have the unbelievable story of Mike Oeming, who broke in at 14, was inking Daredevil at 17. Wow. Writer and artist of Judge Dredd at 20, and then the industry collapsed on him and he had to start over.
Was Mike that young when he was doing Dredd?
Yes.
Mike had a whole career. Yeah, it was really cool.
Like one of those teen pop stars. He had a whole career.
Yeah.
Go to all the career you could have in 4 years, and then the industry collapsed.
That's
So
amazing. I didn't know
then he
that.
started over again. So I've like surrounded by people with interesting stories and journeys and stuff like that. So even though at the time I was at age 14 redrawing the adaptation of Raiders of the Lost Ark because I thought Marvel had screwed theirs up and that they will hire me to replace. Like I was literally just unbelievably either hated myself or completely thought I was God's gift to comics, and there was no middle ground. But so yeah, no, David had gotten in. David was writing with Joe. It was going great.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, show him my shit, and when it was time, David absolutely did. And then Joe called me, and that you know this story. Like Joe called me, and I thought he was calling me to be an artist, and that was not what he was calling me for. So we had an awkward conversation, and off we went, because it was the awkward conversation is what he thought my art was terrible and loved my writing, and told me to my face in a not a gross way, but in a your art. I thought you were just drawn to so you could tell your story. Like I didn't know that's what you wanted. And so I literally hung up the phone and said to Elisa, well, I either met the best boss I'm ever gonna have or the biggest asshole that I've ever
but Joe was brilliant, wasn't it? I mean, when Joe was in charge of Marvel, it was so exciting. And you come in as an indie guy, I came in as a guy who did his first hit in a decade of trying and everything. And he phoned me up and he said, listen, the lunatics have taken over the asylum. I'm in charge of Marvel Comics. Do you want to come and join us? And I remember I was making virtually no money at the time, and I somehow took a paid drop to go to Marvel, so like
did you?
I'd gone from I was making $90 a page when I was doing Superman Adventures, you're getting paid peanuts at the time in the 90s. And then Wildstorm put me up to 150 to do the Authority, which seemed like all the money in the world. I was like, oh my God. And then Joe said, I can take you, but I can only give you $100 a page to do Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimates. And I actually was so into it because it was so exciting. Every 20 years there's a big seismic event in comics, and Joe taking over Marvel was too exciting to pass up, wasn't it? That was a cool time, wasn't it?
It's funny. I don't remember a dime of what I made. Lisa probably has it down like to the penny, but I have no recollection of what our page rates were back then. I had come in you had some genuine mainstream experience. Like you had been through the Warner Brothers machine, but I had not. Even doing Superman or Swamp Thing, like you had an authority and being through the mill on Authority, which you had basically had your metal tested, right? So, and while at the same time I was working for Todd. Like that was like my first, someone paid me money to write for them in comics, like for real was Todd on Sam and Twitch. And so that I think similarly, we both got like a little trial gig before the main stage.
Yes.
And I was always like, oh, I'm so glad that worked out the way it did. Like I if not for Sam and Twitch, I would have made mistakes on Daredevil, like that I wanted to avoid. And so, I know it sounds like, oh, so you made all the mistakes on Sam and Twitch, and no, that's not but I know what mistakes I would have made on Daredevil if not for Sam and Twitch. And
I guess it's mainstream boot camp, isn't it? It was mainstream boot
camp. It is. And both Marvel and DC are really good at normally they give people some mini series or some short stories just to let them figure themselves out, before they give them like a monthly, if that's journey they're headed towards. And you and I didn't get that. They were like, here's Spider-Man, here's X-Men, go. So I'm so grateful that our practice mini series or just gearing up to figure out was these other books like Superman Adventures and Sam and Twitch. And
but did you ever feel
also I thought I always thought Authority was what a great thing for that to have happened to you. Because you got to come in there with some oh, I'm going to prove everybody, you were ready to prove everybody wrong, and also you now knew where the line was.
Yes, and I crossed it.
So you can you crossed it, so you can you can play with it. And I like, again, I always look at comedians as like a connection to how we do, and like, oh, okay, that's the line. Okay, all right, now I know, how to razzle dazzle.
Did you feel like an indie guy for a while, or did you immediately feel an indie guy in Marvel, or did you immediately think, oh well, okay, I'm a Marvel guy now? Did you know, because you look around and we were quite different from the guys who had been at Marvel, you know?
Oh yes.
How long do you think it took before you felt like, okay, I'm one of these guys now?
I think the other generation had to come in again,
Right.
not to Saturday Night Live it again, but I really, I do hear people talk about that. Like I didn't, even after we had big giant hits and events and stuff like that. No, it's not how I see myself, and I'm not being cheeky. I just, it's not where my brain goes, and I'm so enamored with other people who have had this journey that I just watch theirs. I don't focus on mine. And then you look back and go, oh shit, I've been here for 18 years. And that's longer than most. Like that's amazing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still in the middle of it. Ask me in 10 years.
But did you ever think as well that Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men, there was a part of me really thought these wouldn't work as well, because you know, everything Marvel was doing was, you know, sort of flailing a little bit at the time. There was rumors of people's checks being bounced, you know, like being returned and everything.
Yeah.
And remember, John Byrne did a thing a few years before Marvel Spider-Man Chapter 1, you know. And before I read your book, you know, I thought they've kind of done this, but the timing was just right, and it was, you know, a new kid that you'd never seen before and everything. You know, it's like sometimes they try it a few times, don't they? And then there's just one fish gets out the water and onto the land, isn't it? You know.
A couple of memories. Number one, when they announced Ultimate Spider-Man, I think CBR did an article where they got like, you know, it was pre-Twitter, so they would gather people's message board reactions and make an article out of it, which is basically what Twitter is now. But they announced the Ultimate line. What does everyone think? And everyone in comics was shitting all over just the concept of it. Just and the only person that said, sounds pretty good to me is you. Right. So then we didn't know each other at the time. And I remember, well, thank you, Mark, because there's other people who I had a great bit of admiration for, and they were just like, ugh. I'm like, oh.
Well, for me, it kind of worked for me because I wasn't a Marvel reader. You know, I'd only read, and because Marvel comics weren't distributed in Scotland where I was growing up, so I'd only read those black and white reprints of Stan and Steve stuff, you know. So I would pick up a Marvel comic in the 80s and the 90s sometimes when I did get my hands on them, and I didn't know where to begin, you know, because there was all that continuity. So I could sort of get it as a newbie. It's like this, I could pick up a Spider-Man comic and understand it, you know.
Totally.
So the value,
and then when I was the first writer of Ultimate X-Men. I don't know if you.
Yes, I remember.
That. Okay, no, I don't know if you like, because you weren't there, so I don't know if you.
No, they told me that you'd been developing it for a little while, and
I blew it.
What made you decide not to do it? What happened?
I didn't have it. I didn't have it. We both been on projects where like, nah, I don't have it yet. I don't have it. And I had started on Daredevil, was my first gig, so I had done Daredevil. Daredevil got me Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and on both of those, I was writing like a little hellfire demon. I was like, I don't care. Like, and you're asking like the indie mainstream. That's where the indie guy was really kicking in. I was like, like it or don't, this is who I am. This is what I'm gonna do. And I was like, I had so many false starts that I wasn't even going to attempt to please. I was just going to like just do what I do, and if you like it, great. If not, back to characters I go, because that's how I was making a living at the time. I was doing characters at bar mitzvahs and stuff like that we paid very well, but it was very demoralizing. And so a Daredevil, right off the bat, me and Joe were like, great. And then to the point where Joe was like, you're getting a call about Spider-Man. And that's how I met Bill Jemas. And then off to the races, we were on Ultimate Spider-Man, and I had written my first issue, and it wasn't what I had promised them. There was actually no Spider-Man in it. That was my big, like, oh boy, I hope I don't get fired. There's no Spider-Man in Spider-Man. And they were thrilled, and then said, all right, great, do it to X-Men. I'm like, great. And then I sat down, and I did not have the take. It was so weird, because I have drafts of it, like many drafts of it, where it was all about like Gambit and Rogue. And I don't even know why I was doing, I don't even know why. Like they're not even my favorite X-Men at all. Like
they were street level though, weren't you? And you're a kind of street level guy at that point in your career. So you were thinking, what's the Brian Bendis way into X-Men, which is probably a guy like Gambit, isn't it? More than an X-Men.
Yeah, you know? Maybe. Yeah, it was. I look at. I didn't have it at all, and I had this experience once before when I was writing Spawn. Like I started writing it, and then I go, yeah, I don't have it. This isn't for me. Like, and it's a weird feeling because it's the first time I'd ever felt that about something. And then you're like, no, you're a writer, write it. Like, God damn it. Like, and so I doubled down, and it just got worse. And then I literally said to Bill and Joe, can I not do this and still keep Spider-Man? It's like I'm really good at the Spider-Man and I'm not good at this yet. Or I'm ashamed to tell you I don't think I'm good at this. I thought I would be. I've been reading X-Men since I could read, and I don't know why I can't fucking figure this out. But I didn't have it at the time. And you know what it was there are two different art forms, writing a team book and writing a solo title. And a solo title at the moment was where I could follow a character and never leave their shoulder and be with them the whole time. And that's the perspective of the story. And with X-Men, I was lost in whose story it was and where the narrative was. So I failed. And the reason and part of like teaching and doing the stuff I'm doing on Substack is to like teach people that failing is fantastic. It was
great for me because I got the gig. It was perfect.
No, but it was also good for me because I learned something. Like you don't learn a goddamn thing from success. You only learn by fucking up. And at the time it feels like, oh, I fucked up. That's it. Back of the line. I don't get to write comics. And then you're like, no, you learned something. And then it took 10 years. But when the actual job to take over the X-Men became available, I raised my hand because I'm like, you need to conquer this. You need you've been doing this for a while now. You've written like event books with all of the heroes.
Yes.
You should be able to do this. And so I was so great. I did 100 issues of X-Men, and it was like I had finally graduated from that failure that I had gotten on X-Men. But what was great was I quit the X-Men book, and then literally the next day you were hired, and I'm like, great, fantastic. And then you nailed it immediately. I remember it felt like you had a script in the next day, and it was like,
I needed the cash. I think I probably did. Next day. But I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never read X-Men before, so I think my first
Is
draft.
that true?
Yeah. I think I had Wolverine picking up a car or something. Just stuff that made no sense at all if you'd ever read an X-Men comic. I'd never seen the cartoon.
That's so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
It really is, that what you read and what you hadn't read.
Well, I guess everybody always forgets I'm a foreigner until they hear my voice, and then they're like, oh, he's foreign. He's from somewhere else, So my distribution was, my king. I got every DC book because DC was really well distributed in Scotland. But sometimes they were really far apart. You'd get part one of a story, and then you'd wait 4 years for part two and everything, So it was a little messed up until the comic stores appeared. But but do you remember how fun it was? Like once Joe actually planted himself, became boss, and then started filling the place with his guys. Do you remember? It was really exciting, wasn't it? Every new hire, you were like, this is going to be great, and the line just, within about 6 to 12 months, the line was fantastic. Bruce Jones on the Hulk and all that, with Johnny Romita. It was just some really stellar runs, weren't there? And getting together was good too. I mean, because we were guys who were all doing quite isolated jobs. And then suddenly 4 times a year, we were all flown in and hung out in New York for a weekend. Do you remember how crazy those weeks in New York were? It was fantastic.
I remember them all very fondly. That's what I was trying to describe to you, where I think there's some kind of there's a narrative to write here, because not only were they fun and energizing, I found them very energizing. A lot happened that actually became part of pop culture, and that's very strange, because we're all there just trying to think of the best things we can think of. And it was a lot of, and you know what you were excellent at, and people wouldn't guess, is that there's certain types of collaboration. And the one that I've taken to the most in my life is that it's kind of an improv tenet, which is yes and. You're very much a yes and collaborator. You never shut anybody's idea down. It's always about, oh, I know what the coolest angle on that is. And so from that earliest kitchenette retreat that was just us and CB and everybody. And then I remember the next one was bigger.
Yeah.
And you and I were doing an enormous amount of talking.
Well, it was kind of us, wasn't it, for those first ones? Yeah, it was really fun.
And I remember turning to you, and like there was like 50 people in the room, and you and I were doing a lot of talking, and I get very aware of that, and I turn to you, I go, I think we should stop talking. I think people aren't talking because we're talking, right? and then we stopped talking. It was dead silence. Like no one else was talking. And but that retreat, I remember very fondly. I remember having a very good time, even though we had no idea what was going to happen. And then one of us was going to be writing the Avengers, and all of that was going on. And so people have some context. This was a retreat where after a couple smaller retreats, our boss at the time, Bill Gemis, had decided to bring as many people as he could think of into a bigger retreat. And the idea with no agenda other than, why do we publish what we publish? What is Iron Man? What is the Avengers? What is Spider-Man? What's the basic idea, like the core premise? And are we near it? And if not, why not? And what could we do to get near it? And from that retreat spawned New Avengers and Warren Ellis's Iron Man, and just like all of the stuff that started popping out of what became that generation of Marvel stories for the next few years. And it was quite amazing. I remember it all very fondly. And I think, having now been in other rooms and other situations, you realize how delicate and beautiful it is when it all works. Like when you have that many people in the room and it's working, that is a very special event, and that doesn't always happen.
It was all good people in terms of personality, but also good people who were very good at their jobs as well. And I remember everybody was just bringing their A game. And what was really nice is it was a bit like everybody was rooting for each other as well. Like everybody wanted each other. There was competition, but at the same time, it was a friendly rivalry, and everybody wanted everybody to succeed and to be there at the next meeting. There was nobody stabbing anybody in the back. There was zero like that going on. Now,
nothing obvious. Nothing I could see at the surface level.
Well, yeah. But I remember saying at one point, something, guys, and I think we'd been sitting there for 8 hours because it was long days. Remember, we'd start from 8:30 in the morning, and the room was so big we had to go to that legal office, remember, with a gigantic table. Mm-hmm. And we would be there from 8:30, maybe 5:30. We'd eat pizzas and cakes and all this great stuff they would bring in for us and everything. And at one point, I think I was feeling quite sentimental, because I hadn't seen everybody for a little while. And I said, something, we're going to look back on this in years to come, and we'll look back and think, these were really good days. It was like really fun doing our job. Everybody likes each other. And we all hang out at night time. As soon as we finished working, we were all out for dinner, and then all out drinking all night. I was drinking. Garth Ennis would always show up about midnight, and we'd go drinking to 5:30 a.m. There was one pub that Garth could always get them to serve us at 5:30 a.m. And then I'd be meeting David Bogart for breakfast at 7:30, and then do the same again. So I was getting by in 1 hour's sleep for maybe 4 nights in a row. And I remember saying to everybody, we're going to look back on this, and these are going to be good days. And everybody booed me and threw things at me because it was too Spielbergian, but they were good days, weren't they? It was great.
No, they absolutely were. And the added things to me that I remember is that you and I both had message boards at the time, which were the absolute best way to communicate with fans.
It was awesome.
It's the best energy. And you and I both handled our message boards very differently. And you were like, I'm going to beat this bar. Who wants to buy me booze? And I was like, I would never do that. And you always had people showing up to buy you drinks. It was so delightful. I admired it a great deal. I'm not joking. I was like, that's how you do it. That's amazing.
But I remember on average, I'd say we'd have 40 or 50 people out on a night, like if we were meeting up with readers, which was always great. I've actually made some tremendous friends from those nights. But I remember some guys showed up one time and they ran up a $2,000 bar bill for us. They just said, he's paying.
Bring it up.
And I didn't have a credit card at the time. And Joe Quesada, I still owe $2,000, because he ended up paying the bill for everyone.
And you never paid him back?
Yeah, he'll never listen to this. I'm going to just let this go to see what happens. But you know the story when people say to me, "What's Brian Bendis like?" The thing I've told you this a million times, but I always remember from those retreats was, do you remember the Tom Brever thing? Which I love. I think this Tom's the most good-natured guy in the world, but this sums up your niceness, I think, and your Jewish girl, everything, it's all here. Do you remember this thing where you cracked a joke? Because everybody's joking all the time and everybody's busting each other's balls. And there was some tiny joke you made about, but it was funny, about one of Tom's books. And even Tom laughed. It was like, that was a good gag. But I remember looking over at you, and you immediately hated the fact you'd made this jab,
Oh, I know what the joke was too.
And that evening, we were having dinner, and you said, I can't stop thinking about that joke. And I was like, Brian, Tom's forgotten this already. Like, he was laughing too, don't worry, Then we were out drinking later, and you were like, I need to go back to my hotel.
I still think about that.
And then next morning I saw you apologizing to Tom, and then it was like the guilt left you. You were like, and you were okay again. And I thought, that's Brian Bendis in an absolute nutshell. You're always worried, like you always like to have a laugh, but you make sure everybody's okay afterwards, so.
Well, yeah. Well, I think what you saw was a man realizing that maybe he should grow the fuck up. And but here's the real me, is that I remember that joke. It was about Freedom Force, and I forgot that Tom was the writer of Freedom Force, and I made some joke about, well, at least it's not Freedom Force, like something like that, like something so terrible. And I will say that I've learned something now. If I'm going to make a joke about something in pop culture, and I'm in the room, and I go, does anyone have anything to do with, I ask if they had anything to do with the project. But what's funny, Tom, and that Tom is has a very stoic persona, very almost I said my favorite Vulcan. I've said this on Twitter a couple times. And when we were on Avengers for 10 years, he actually, out of his own pocket, bought me a plaque and gave it to me in commemoration of our time together on Avengers. And it might be up there somewhere. And it's literally, and because of our relationship and how just business-like it was so emotional to me, that he would think of me that way. And even after that, I still think he thinks about that joke. That's all me, 100%.
You should give him a plaque saying, I'm really sorry about that.
The Freedom Force joke from 2006. Anyway, yeah.
But I remember actually, you never drunk when we were out. You were always out with us and everything, but you would always have a soda water or whatever. I think you did.
Yeah, I was never alcohol.
Do you still not drink? Do you not drink at all? Yeah.
No, I'm a weed guy. I'm all in on I'm a Portland hippie.
I was going to say, because everybody needs something that takes them out of themselves in some way. Something that gets you out of it. But so drugs, how far will you go?
Weed is legal here, and it's quite delightful and lovely, and it's created it's excellent. I don't know, for middle age, it's fantastic.
See, I'm more an alcohol than a drugs guy. I've always preferred booze to drugs, but weirdly, that I'd say half of comics is alcohol, half of comics is weed, isn't it? Really?
Yes, that I and it's funny because I do think that if there's any kind of encampment in the weed people are kind of together, and also the those who drink do seem to be more social as well. To be fair, you would see me in your social environment not doing the thing you do is what it would be. But I admired it as well. It wasn't how it wasn't just how I was raised. I just never got there.
So at conventions, there's always somebody's room, usually Garth Ennis's room or somebody, where everybody goes, you drink the minibar dry, and somebody brings in more booze and everything. There must be weed rooms that I'm not going to then. At the conventions, that there's some creators having weed rooms.
Well, there's definitely there for a few years, there was a lot of, if you were in a legal, in America, it's so strange. There's whole portions of the country that it's legal and whole portions where it's not. And where it's not legal, it seems insane that it's legal, right? It seems like it's like murder is legal. It's just that's and so for years I would travel to New York, but I would have little gift bags for everybody of stuff that I can easily get that they can't get at all. Right. So but now it's legal in Jersey and New York, so now it's everywhere. But I will say, I'd gone through waves of times where I had some anxiety, really, I was wrestling with, and actually this is one of my favorite stories. My first New York show as a DC creator, where Dan was going out of his way to make a lot of my dreams come true. He was being incredibly wonderful to me, including like, you and Frank Miller are going to sign Supermans together. Like, he was literally like putting me in like my dreams, and knowing that he was doing it right. So I had an enormously emotional day at in New York Comic-Con, and I was also, I had just survived something that I had a near death experience that I was just starting to unpack, and so I walked like a half a mile, like blocks away from the Javits Center. And I was like, I was having some, and I found a little stoop, and I lit up, and I was just like, give me a minute. I'm just gonna like, just look at my phone and just smoke for a second. And then I hear Mr. Bendis, and I look up, and a line had formed for me to sign stuff. I am half a mile from the show. And then one was a mother with her kid, and she looked at me like, I'm not at the show. Like I'm clearly like, she's looking at me like, and I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Yeah, it was a good show. Though. I will say, it was
70s guys. I always got the impression there was a load of weed going on with the 70s guys. But
now that I smoke, I can see all the weed.
Yes,
I can see everything, like
the Doctor Strange comics and everything. But weirdly, when you go into the 60s, the stuff that you assume is kind of out there creators are the straightest guys on earth. It's the Steve Ditko's and everybody.
Or Kirby,
Jack Kirby
stuff.
Jack Kirby, I'd imagine, never touched anything at all,
That's what you hear, and you just look at it, and I'm not saying he was on anything. There's no evidence at all, but you look at the images, and some of them were goddamn psychedelic, and what everyone was going around, you like, it must have been something.
I think he was more psychic. He was maybe more intuitive. Like, it's a bit like H.P. Lovecraft, isn't it? I think Kirby, he just didn't think the way other men think. Like, he just existed on a different realm almost, didn't he?
Well, we discuss a lot. It's a little bit in Tom's book, but Matt and I talk about a lot with Kirby. Like, there's a lot of evidence that he never left the bunker, like emotionally. Like, there was he had some bad shit happen in the war, and all of his work is a reflection of that, including him yelling at God or creating gods to yell at us. It's very similar to like Will Eisner's contract with God. It's like like I'm now here with my trauma, and all I have is this piece of paper, right? And so it all goes in there, and whatever shape it is, and that fascinates me a great deal. I will say I spend time looking at this work that we've studied our whole lives now as an older person, or at the age the person was when they had made it. Knowing what I know now about being this age, and reflect on it differently, particularly some of like middle-aged Kirby stuff. It's hard to look at and go, interesting.
Because to go from Boy Commandos through action books like Captain America and everything, and then to get to his surreal Marvel of the early 70s, and then going and doing something like, his DC work in the 70s, like New Gods.
It's all about, we need some new gods here. Like, I don't like these gods.
But I think I'm about the age now that Kirby was when he was doing New Gods, and like, I'm fascinated weirdly by the same stuff, like Earth origin stuff, ancient civilizations. This is the stuff I'm looking up online, So I don't know if it's just when men hit certain points in their life, they get drawn towards this type of material, like where humans come from, that kind of stuff, the very, very nitty gritty stuff. As you hit middle age, that Kirby got there before any of us, though.
The one I'm really I'm enamored by that's going on in my heart is how much I'm in tune with Alan Moore's mystical aspects of creation. And when I was younger, what? And now I'm like, oh yeah, no, I now I've had and I don't know if you've had, and here comes Portland Hippie going to ask you a weird question. Have had experience in your life where something creative actually brought something into your life that was beyond like the physical, like I'm now connected with someone on a level that I can't even describe with words, and I'm a word person, right? But because of the energy of the story, and I'm like, okay, well, that's more than right. And I know when Alan Moore says it with that accent, it sounds like Hogwarts. It sounds like like when I sound like, I feel some magic over there. I just that doesn't sound normal. But I've had a couple of really intense experiences where like, whoa. Like,
Well, are you conjuring somebody up, or are you intuitively knowing what's coming down the line for you? Have you written something and then you seek that person out as well? So, I mean, I don't know the answer to it, but I know that when I write something, sometimes I feel it 18 months later, like in real life.
I had a couple of experiences where someone's work was affecting me a great deal, and I then leaned into that while I was working, and then but you would never know. Like a musician, like I will say there was a musician who's rather well known who I was obsessed with while I was doing a certain book. A filmmaker friend of mine showed them that book, and then they ended up writing half an album just because of reading it, made them feel like writing this music. And that person had no idea that their DNA was in that book.
That's crazy.
And they felt the need to then write 4 or 5 tracks.
Yeah.
And they had no they had no idea what the connection was other than they felt it. And then my filmmaker friend handed me the little EP that this person had made and said, hey, they did this because of that. And I went, what? I was like, holy shit. It was like a magic trick right in front of me. It was like craziest thing. So I've had this experience a few times, and it's I'm quite enamored with it because I was not that person like when we started at Marvel. And I know I sound like, to younger creators, I sound like a crazy hippie person. And that's, I don't know what to do with it.
They'll be saying this in 20 years' time. They'll be saying the same thing in 20 years. But it's true because you tap into something that's a collective consciousness, though, don't you? Like, we know these characters that existed before we were born and they will be around after we die. We sort of understand who they are. We kind of know what their favorite movies would be. We know what meals they would eat and everything. And yet they're not real. And yet we all have the absolute shared idea of what's right and what's wrong for those characters, and that's odd, isn't it? So there's definitely we're plucking these things out of some ethereal realm, wherever they are, aren't we?
No, absolutely, yeah. It's bizarre because it does feel like you're just conjuring it, and then when you see the connection, you're like, oh my goodness. So and we've had it with readers that are our readers, where they feel a connection, and I try not to blow past it.
Yeah.
When someone's having particularly a fellow creator. Yeah. Because I've experienced it, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it other than acknowledge it and see what else is there. I don't know. It's just amazing to me.
And it's funny.
I know I'm weirding you out a little bit with this.
No. What's fascinating to me is the Golden Age and Silver Age guys say the same things. It's really interesting if you read any of their sort of like niche autobiographies and everything. Everybody seems to tap into this at some point in their life and their career. Because we write probably more unself-consciously than anyone else because we have to write faster. We're not writing 2 screenplays a year. We're not writing 1 novel every 2 years. We're firing this stuff out. So you're going into your real latent subconscious, really, aren't you? You're tapping into things you don't normally do.
So you have felt that as well when you're in Hollywood and they're working at their pace, and you're like, hey, yeah, we're just faster. We just are.
Netflix can't believe it. Like they'll say, well, obviously, it'll take you a year to do this. And I was like, I'll have this in about 7 weeks. Don't worry. And I worry that it makes it look as if you're just firing stuff out there. But we were kind of trained like the 30s pulp writers, weren't we? We had to hit these deadlines every month. It was like having a movie out every month, wasn't it?
It certainly raised us to trust our instincts very well. And you also learn there's 3 or 4 creative answers to any of these dilemmas, and none of them are wrong. One that speaks to you. You brought up Netflix, and I didn't want to go without mentioning something to you that I have not mentioned to you, which is I'm very grateful to you because there's been a couple of times in your career where you have advocated for yourself and done well for yourself in a way that I admired a great deal. I hope when they write the book on you that this is something you get a lot of credit for, which is that you took yourself you don't take yourself seriously, but you take Millar World so seriously that you always did right by it and your partners. And then when you huffed off to Netflix, I looked at it not with jealousy, but with oh, that's who we are. That's the level we could achieve, and it emboldened me to go for things in my life that I wanted because of that. And I wanted to thank you for that because that was a gift that you've given me a couple of times. And I hope you hear there's a difference between being oh, I'm so jealous, and I'm yeah, I want that. And if I want it, I should go do that for myself. And
I
thanks
think
for
that's a
showing
good
me
approach to it. Like,
that I
I
want
felt
it.
the same with the Image guys when I was in my early 20s and those guys were just, starting out. I remember hearing like Rob one year, somebody said had made like $20 million or something, and everybody was so angry because he was like 24 years old. And I was like, that's awesome. I love the fact that Rob made that, because it shows that guys who do what we do can have and cannot be ripped off, because our industry is littered with three generations of guys who were ripped off. And I love the fact that a creator is getting the benefits of his work and everything. So I am exactly the same. If I see one of our guys doing well, I'm like, this is great. It means we can all do this.
No, but it's also like the how you saw yourself and the value of your material is you saw it with more value than most of our peers do. Most of our peers have a hard time seeing their own value, and it's kind of, we're all wired to just think shitty of ourselves, and so which doesn't make for the best business model, right? And so I just wanted to tell you while we were talking that that you helped guide me into some good spaces. So thank you.
Do you know I think I inadvertently destroyed half the industry though, because so many artists got so rich overnight that they don't want to work anymore. So many of my friends who were my partners were like, I'm going to take 5 years off. That kind of thing. We need these guys back. We need them back.
Well, I heard you talking to Rob on the other one about like, will there be a change in the industry? And I was like surprised that you don't think it's already happened, because like even flashing back to like our early days at Marvel to now, the entire marketplace is completely evolved to something else, of which I'm proudly involving myself in the new spaces as much as I can. And I think part of it was a whole generation of creators. Like as a teacher, I must tell you, I would like, there was a wave when I was teaching that everyone wanted to grow up to be like Chris Claremont, and then everyone wanted to grow up to be Brian O'Malley, and then everyone wanted to be Kirkman. And that like there's an evolution of what the younger kids want to be, and now they all want to be Raina. Right. And I kind of love that evolution, because it's evolved towards the truth of them, right? It's not, I want to be successful. I want to tell my truth. And you doing that with your material at the same time that there is like Captain Underpants and Raina and like these YA spaces are opening and they're so honest. It changed our business. Our business is different than it used to ever be. I remember like there was that feeling like if Marvel went away 20 years ago, all of comics would go away. And like if that happened today, not saying like there's no hint of that happening, but that wouldn't be the end of comics. That would be just another evolution.
Well, you walk into the Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet in London, I remember post-COVID walking in for the first time in ages, and the downstairs in there is enormous. It's like a warehouse downstairs, and every single shelf used to be Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, and everything. And there was always maybe one small wall of manga, And then post-COVID, it actually did a flip. I'd never seen a cultural shift happen so fast, but everything was manga, every single part of the store. And this store's been there for 40 years. And there was just a little section, literally a little bit, that was Marvel, DC, and all the Western comics. And I think what I was talking to Jerry and to Rob about actually was just from a Marvel, DC, Image perspective, which is their fight back in this. Or not so much a fight back as how do they adapt to survive in that world. I mean, I'm not in that world, the Marvel, DC world anymore, but I do have such a love for it. I grew up loving it so much, that this is what I devoted my life to, and I'd hate to see it disappear. I'd hate to, you see the offices getting smaller and moving to LA and all this kind of thing, and it's sad to me, because it's something that's such a big part of who I am, so I'd love to see Marvel and DC adapt and work in this modern world, because I'm reading less Marvel and DC than I have in a long time, and I'd love to. I'm still reading some, but I'm not the way I was when I was 16 and I was picking up everything I could afford to buy,
also some of that is the material isn't being made for us. We are older people who have read a lot of stuff, and sometimes these like hero journey cycles just have to start over for a new generation. And the Ultimate line was that for a certain group, age group, and now something's going to come along that's that for that age group, and it won't be for us at all. But we have to remember
Yeah.
what people said about us when the Ultimate line came out, and we have to be generous and open-hearted to.
Oh no, I don't mean it for us to be doing it. What I mean
Yeah.
is, you know, for those Marvel DC legacy characters, I'd love to see them reborn for a new generation. The way that, you know, Marv and Frank and all those guys come in the 80s, Alan Moore, all these amazing people come in and replenish something that looked really tired in the late 70s. And then, you know, like we come in with our guys and everything in the year 2000, and that brought some juice for another decade or so, you know. And I'd love to see some 20-somethings coming in now and just having a take in this stuff that I haven't seen before. I don't want it to go with us, you know what I mean? I want this stuff to be around forever and just evolve. You know?
No, there are an enormous amount of people making outstanding comics. And but going back to our earlier point, though, I think that the average American creator, and I can't speak for your part of the world, but it's certainly there are people who are dying to write and draw Batman, but that's not the only thing everyone's all into now. And they now it's been a whole generation of you know, not the image founders, but image creators like you, and you know, like everyone who's got their own little like shingle is showing people that you can build your own little thing here, right? And so there's a lot of that going on in so many little pockets of our culture that it's absolutely fascinating. Can a new Batman come out of that? Can a new character that grabs an entire era come out of that? I don't know. That's what we'll see. I'm fascinated to find out.
But who saw 29-year-old Frank Miller in 1986 coming in with Dark Knight? You know, it's like our Daredevil, a character that looked on its knees, suddenly becoming Marvel's #1 book. You know, I'm always hopeful, you know, that just as a fan, I want to see the new take, you know.
Well, yeah, and listen, you haven't seen Wakanda Forever yet. It's one of their best. It's really quite wonderful. It's up there with Dark Knight to me, and on its emotional journey, and it's and so these characters are gonna evolve in all these spaces, man. I mean, well, listen, there's a She-Hulk TV show.
I know. Who could have seen this? Yeah.
Amazing special effects. So we're of an age where we had a Hulk TV show when we were a kid, right? Yeah. And we're so happy with that Hulk TV show. and then when you look at the unbelievable special effects in this She-Hulk TV show, I can't believe it. I can't believe this is how I'm relating to the world as an old man. Well, when I was a kid, my Hulk, anyway.
It's fine. Do you ever miss the message boards? Remember, like before Twitter, before Facebook, we all hung out in the message boards, you know, but like, you ever miss it?
Yes, I do, because it really was a good conversation for most people, and a lot of good came out of it. And you and I both created a safe space for some people who ended up being like real creators in this business, and that I didn't know it at the time, but now I look back and go, oh, you made it. Awesome. Fantastic. That message board was a positive part of their journey. So, so Spencer opened up the Substack space for us a little while ago. So I brought, as part of my Substack, I have a Discord, which is basically the message board being brought back. Right. And it's the first time since I had my message board where I feel the same energy. Yeah. Where, we're all safe in this little pocket and we can all just goof around and not worried about, you know, we can actually talk about elections without anyone yelling at us.
And it's comic guys. It's not the mainstream.
Yeah, it's all
as well. You know, like, I mean, a huge amount of my Twitter followers are guys I went to school with and everything. You know, it's very different from the message board. You know?
No, Twitter, I can't talk to anybody on. I don't want to give, like, even before this recent nonsense, it's not a conversation that you can have. And even when I look back like 6 years, I'm like, who was I talking to? Like, no one, these tweets are like, they're completely useless. And if you had a good idea, put in a script. And so, but with Substack, it's allowing me to take my class online, and now we're talking about creativity with people and helping them on their journey. And then it just, so I feel a sense of community again, which is great. So
great. I love that.
So as social media collapses, which it does look like it is going to happen, these new spaces where sadly you're a little siloed, and but at least you're siloed with people who really want the information you're giving them. So,
but I feel that with this as well. I mean, this is why, for no good reason, I started this YouTube channel, because I kind of love the idea of something. I was going to make it because I work with a lot of actors and directors and everything. Then I thought I'm going to make it everyone, but I think I'm going to mainly focus on comic guys. And if I do speak to an actor or whatever, it's going to be through the prism of comic books, because I feel we've almost lost this thing that we adore. Like there's almost no news sites exclusively for comics and everything anymore.
I agree with this completely.
So YouTube is actually a great galvanizing place, and there's a little comment section and everything. Plus, it gives me a chance to talk to people either I haven't
comment section. What? Anyway, don't do the comments. No, I agree with you. I feel that comics has a hard time celebrating itself the way music and film does.
Yeah,
where they actually make content about their history and preserve their history, and really, and that doesn't happen in comics. And of course, there's all kinds of archival material and stuff like that. But there's a genuine history and an oral history that is falling by the wayside. And it was, it's funny. Like during the pandemic, I was trying to think of I feel like there's a biography in comics that needs to be told that hasn't been told yet. And immediately, everyone writes their Stan biography, and yes, there's the Kirby should be on money, so he absolutely should have a biography. But isn't there a more interesting biography to tell? Whose story is so weird and unique that it actually tells the whole story? And I was thinking about it. I actually called Howard Chaykin a couple of times about this, because I had some questions about the past, and he told me some true stories about some people that maybe I'm not going to tell that story. And but I'm agreeing with you that I feel that it's kind of up to us to spend some time celebrating our history, so it's archived and it's there for people to enjoy. Not that it's so fucking important, but for people who love this, it is. So,
but it is, and to have it all in one place, that's why I want to have this, where we get Steranko. We've got you and Steranko and all these guys all in one place, because in 20 or 30 years' time, most of these guys won't be around. I mean, this week alone, we lost two amazing guys, Carlos Pacheco and Kev O'Neill. It's so comic guys, although they live to their 90s, sometimes they don't last forever. And all these people we love, I just want to have them all in one place that you can just click on it and get their life story kind of thing, and see what their voice sounded like and what their likes and dislikes were and everything, and what their jokes were like and everything. I'd love this just to be there forever. Yeah.
No, because even in the world that we were creating the Ultimate Universe in, that world doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, that world, that pop culture doesn't exist anymore. We were reflecting things in society that no longer exist, and it delights me. I'm not whining about it. I'm deeply fascinated by the parts that went the way we thought they were going to go, and the parts that didn't go the way we thought we were going to go, and what we thought was funny. Then I'm sure you've got not a mean joke, but a joke where you're like, wow, I really thought that was funny back then.
But it's interesting though, because that Howard Chaykin book, I don't know if you've been reading it. Have you been checking it out? Hey Kids Comics, have you been following?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I called about it.
Yeah. I want to make a TV show of it. I'm so busy in my own stuff just now, but as soon as I have time, I want to do a show of that. I mean, the history of Marvel and DC Comics from the inside. There's
quite a few projects in Hollywood right now. There's some writers who are doing different versions of this, either the Will Eisner years or the Golden Era. There's and I have another friend who's got called The Bullpen. There's some show where it's the 60s. It's Mad Men, but comics.
Mad Men, but Howard's got the authenticity because he was there. He knew those guys personally.
Yeah, and what I love about it is how authentic it is. But god damn, is he mad? He's so angry, and it's funny because I've read the similar stories, an almost identical story, but with a warmness, someone who looked back on it fondly. And that is not what Howard is doing. Howard is not looking and if it is an aggressive fondness of that story. So I was delighted by it. And to the point where I'm just name names. I'm you're just there. There's you spent more time making up names than you did typing it.
I asked him to do a bootleg version where he actually does re-letter it.
That's a great idea.
It'd be awesome, but you'd pay any money for that, wouldn't you?
Dude, are you gonna have him on?
Oh, without question, yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
Hopefully over the next few weeks. Like, I mean, Howard's one of my gods. You know, he's up there with Millar and Moore and everybody. You know, they're the comic book Mount Rushmore, aren't they? For our generation of guys, like Chaikin is up there.
Yeah, he was my number one. He was like my Bruce Springsteen. Like when I was like American Flag was like that's everything I ever wanted. And also just as a Jewish person, he was the most proudly Jewish man I knew
until you came along. I think he's
no, but I think I remembered him being so Jewish that it made me feel better about being Jewish. Like sometimes you just go, oh, you're Jewish, cool. It just made me feel better about it, and also made me feel like, oh, maybe I could do this for a living. There's a Jewish guy, like, oh, Larry Lieber, Roger Stern, like these are names of people I went to temple with. Like I could it made it feel like it could be done. So I try to like not hide that part of myself. So if someone else needs that little feeling, they can have it as well. Also on social media, like everyone to know I'm Jewish. So if there's any problem with it, we can move on.
I mean, you must tell me you're Jewish about 500 times a day when we're together. It's so funny. It's like living in a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. It's amazing. I love it.
It's because I don't have a Jewish name, and I constantly have to just it's not painfully obvious that I'm Jewish.
Anyway. You know, it's funny because I was actually wanting to talk to you about Judaism as well. You know, in the sense that for me, comics and Jewishness is so intertwined. It's in comic book DNA, isn't it, all the way back? And I think you're like the last big Jewish creator I can think of off the top of my head. But look back at the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s. All the geniuses were Jewish. You know, I mean, from Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, you know, running all the way through, you know, the Silver Age, you know, all the great Golden Age guys that were Jewish teenagers, really, like Joe Kubert and all those guys, Alex Toth coming in. But but what's happened? It's very odd, isn't it? The Jewishness of comics has dissipated, probably late 80s, you know, and now it's very few and far between to have a big Jewish creator. But I think something's missing. Like all my heroes were Jewish growing up, you know, like in film, all the best directors were Jewish. You know, the great writers, the really great screenwriters were Jewish, the 30s and 40s guys and everything, you know. And the comic book guys, and I do think films lost it a little bit as well because there was such an intelligence to the writing, you know, because, you know, Jewish guys think things through, you know, and I love Jewish writers. But why do you think that it became less Jewish, the industry? What do you think?
Well, it started out of necessity. What would happen was people would either come to this country or they were raised in this country as Jewish. And then like if they wanted to get a job at Sterling Cooper, and Mad Men, they couldn't. And Mad Men actually dealt with it a little bit like, oh, there's a Jew in the building, right? That wasn't, they weren't allowed in the WASPy Catholic Christian ad agencies, so they had to go get jobs elsewhere, and that was in the more scruffy world of comics where they could get work. So that's in the most generalized way, that's where like why it became and was referred to sometimes as a Jewish medium, because there were so many Jews in it, because it was the only medium that was really letting them in.
Right.
All right. So sadly, there's a great deal of anti-Semitism involved in the answer, but in what ended up being great was that, and you know, this is, and I highly recommend everyone read, if they haven't read Cavalier and Clay, because it does a great job describing this in detail and not in the broad strokes of which I'm painting it right now, which is that the Judaism and the stories of Judaism and, you know, the biblical aspects of Judaism made for great comic book storytelling. And you know, the tenets of the story actually matched the superheroes that were being built. So they seemed very honest. They seemed like they were coming from a real place, like a Talmudic place, and so that was cool. And also you had like these, you know, little Jewish boys like pining to be like big strong dudes, you know, so and that's such a visceral escapism that it spoke to generations of readers. Now where I disagree with you, that like I think things are better now, is that because now the space is open to everyone and all, so you're getting much more truth. You're getting not just one, because I would say that when you have a lot of Jewish screenwriters and whatnot, or they're writing, sometimes they're not even writing themselves, they're writing what they think people wanted too. There was a lot of hidden Judaism, right?
Yeah.
Or like people not feeling good about themselves, so they hide it. They even hide their Jewish names so people don't know they're Jewish. And so I was so aware of people hiding their Judaism when I was growing up, that when I saw people not hiding their Judaism, I gravitated to it.
Yeah.
And now when I see people, and then I use comics like a lot of people to like really, I'm gonna not hide from people who hate Jews. I'm gonna just put it in my work. And so I think a lot of people see comics as a very visceral, inexpensive way to express whoever they are, no matter whatever it is. And we did it, they can do it, and everyone can do it. And now here we are, where it's just wide open, and it's as brave as you want to be is the space, is what the space will allow. And I think it's great. I think that what Will Eisner got out of it is what a lot of people are getting out of it now, and that's fantastic.
No, I mean, the broad church of comics, I mean, I'm a beneficiary. I'm a Scottish Catholic. It's like, I assumed you had to live in New York to work in comics when I was growing up, so the idea that somebody from my part of the world could come and do something is amazing. But I do miss that Jewish voice, the sort of Stan voice, Peter Parker. You do. I think that's why you.
Call me whenever you want it. I'm right here. Just give me a call. Do this anytime you want. No, I get you, and I do. When I look at the heroes, I see a lot of Judaism, even in the ones that are technically not. Like Peter Parker is clearly a Jewish character, and I know I've joked about it over the years.
Yeah.
But if you read Danny Fingeroth's book, which just came out, which I highly recommend, by the way, because Danny wrote a book about Stan that wasn't like looking for that agenda about like we're but it really talked about Stan, who evolved as he went and grew. And the one thing that shocked me when I read it was that Stan was kind of forced to go to work for his uncle at age 15 in publishing. So he had to come into the city and work in publishing at 15 and get yelled at by his boss. And you're like, oh my God, that's Peter Parker. Like that's the story. Peter Parker went to Daily Bugle and got yelled at by.
So the uncle was J. Jonah Jameson, yeah.
Yes, it's identical to all the relationships that he had over there that went on for a while. And then I just love that Stan's like even hiding it. It's the most personal thing. Is the thing everyone gravitated to. Like you can't hide your true trauma and yourself. People find it, like they know it when they see it. So when I see Stan, like he is Peter Parker, I'm like, oh, this is a Jewish character. That's just
mind blowing. I mean, he's even 15 years old, isn't he? Like Peter Parker's 15.
Yeah, no, it is him. It is a truth that he knew that no one else knew. No one else can relate to going into the city at 15 and working in publishing. There's only Peter Parker did that.
That's amazing. I love.
Yeah, and it was Stan.
Considered that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you must have felt it whenever you were doing Superman as well. Like the Jewishness of Superman's fascinating. Are you familiar with a writer called Howard Jacobson? He's a British writer, really super highbrow writer, and he's done a 2-hour lecture on this, the Jewishness of Superman. And
I believe I've seen this. I don't remember.
It's all online. I'll send you a link. I'll get you a link out. But
anytime really something Jewish shows up on YouTube, I go, "What is this now?" Hold on.
But I mean, there's the obvious stuff, which is, the Moses thing of, Superman put in a basket essentially and sent down the Nile. But then there's even things like, Brainiac and the Pharaoh. He draws comparisons with where he's talking about a shrunken people, that's looking for the promised land and everything. I mean, the parallels are fascinating. There's a really, really interesting.
No, they're all there. And that's what I was talking about. Like a lot of people using like the stories that they were told growing up and applying them to the genre. And really it's the backbone of a lot of the genre.
Yeah.
And so Superman is 100% the Moses allegory, like beat for beat. And when I was growing up in Cleveland, that's what people would say. Superman was born here and rock and roll was born here. Like those are the two things that you heard.
Do you remember the line in Superman 2? There's a line in Superman 2 where he's rescuing the kid at Niagara Falls, and Donner had the line put in where he says, "Of course he's Jewish." Do you remember that line when he's rescuing?
Oh no, I didn't.
It's one of the crowds went out. This is what a nice man, and then the reply is, "Of course he's Jewish." As these.
Oh really? I don't think.
So there's all these little intros.
Or
What's that? No, that's in the original cut. Yeah. One of
I'm
the scenes.
surprised I didn't catch that. No, but so you grow up with in a city that doesn't have a lot of, at the time in the 70s and 80s, Cleveland was had what they call a second city mentality, which is we're not New York.
Yes.
We're just where nothing is as good here as it is somewhere else. So but they had a lot of pride about Superman and a lot of pride about rock and roll. And so you grew up with that. And then as I became of age, Art Spiegelman's Mouse was handed to me by my rabbi, who was trying to connect with me on some level, and which was I deeply appreciated, and I couldn't believe it. The rabbi was not that hip. It was unbelievable. So these are the pieces that meant a lot to me. And then Harvey Pekar, these are the Cleveland Jewish pieces that would come up. So but when someone tells you at a young age, the guys who created Superman are from Cleveland and they're Jewish, even though they may be from Canada, it does make you feel, I can do this then there is some kind of journey that I can take to get to comics.
But it's the same, I guess. Alan Moore in 1981, 82, 83, he was the first British writer to crack the American comic market, and not just crack it, but become a sensation. So it then created that next wave of guys and the next wave of guys, and you had this critical mass of people eventually who were the next Alan Moore over the course of 15 years probably. And that's what built Vertigo and all these things, all these brilliant writers that came in. And the same thing happened, I guess, with the Beatles. When they cracked America, then suddenly Liverpool and the surrounding areas had loads of great bands emerge, isn't it? So somebody has to break through, I guess, and it's inspirational, isn't it? So you think, well, he's not
for
unlike
us, it
me,
was me, Brian Azzarello, and Brian K. Vaughan, all three Brians from Cleveland, around the same neighborhood, all of which have not been able to hold on to their hair. All came out of the same.
Speaking of Brian Vaughan, do you remember the great gag we played on Brian Vaughan in the message boards? That was the best, wasn't it?
About his age?
His age, yeah. It was
okay.
We spread a rumor that he was 10 years older. He was 10 years older than they said. And what was funny was he kind of laughed it off when we were talking on the message board about it. And then it obviously got under his skin, do you remember? And he came back like an hour later and he'd scanned his driving license and put it up online for people to see his actual age. It was fantastic. It was so good.
I admire Brian a great deal. And
he's amazing. I love him.
Yeah. And again, I've known him a long time. I've told you the story years and years ago, but I had my first independent comics were coming out, and I was working at some of the media organizations in Cleveland. So one of the Cleveland magazines, local Cleveland magazines, was going to do an article on me, and they hired Brian K. Vaughan to write the article.
Oh, really?
And Brian and I are on the phone. Is how we first met. Yeah. And we were on the phone. He's interviewing me, and he says, I'm no ego at all. He just goes, yeah, it's weird. I don't know, in some ways I feel like you should be interviewing me. I go, why? What do you do? He goes, I write Batman. I go, what Batman? He goes, the monthly Batman comic. I go, yeah, why are you talking to me? And he wasn't he was totally right. Why am I talking to you? Yeah, I admire Brian a great deal.
I love what he's done as well. The weird thing about Brian Vaughan is I don't think I've ever read a bad comic that he's done. Nope. Everybody has their off periods and things like that. Brian's just always on it, isn't he? Everything is something you would give to a friend to show what a good comic book is, isn't it?
I admire it a great deal. I admire it a great deal. And I do, one of my big embarrassments in comics is deep in the trenches at Marvel, Joe was trying to get Brian to sign on exclusive, and they were even gonna offer him something really crazy, something they hadn't even offered us. And I was like, oh my God. I'll tell you, I don't. It's his business. I don't want to tell you, but they offered something where I went, oh, he has to do that, and it was just I wanted to read it. This is it's I literally called up Brian and berated him. We're not friends, and I just berated him for not taking this. I know better than him, and I've apologized since then. But it was quite funny that. I am so embarrassed that I did that.
I've never asked you this, but see, when I left Marvel and went off and did Millar Worlds, obviously there was a new wave of people sort of coming in around that point. What was that like? Because you were in one very established group,
Remember Rob Lowe and St. Elmo's Fire?
Because we were all really good friends and we knew each other well and everything. And what was that like, that transition? Did it feel, was it gradual, or did it feel overnight, or what was it like?
That's a good question, because it was actually felt like both at the same time. It was both gradual and where'd everybody go? Because we don't see each other every day, right?
Yes.
Like we only see each other a couple of times a year, and we make the most of it, right? And so then, but there was always people shifting in and out of those retreats. Either they got a gig in Hollywood, or they just weren't doing them anymore, or Marvel wasn't interested at the time, and that was always a little stressful about like which one of your friends were invited to the retreat or not, right? Because it wasn't up to us who was coming, and you're always like hesitant to even bring it up. Like, what are you doing this weekend? So there was this. What was weird for me is like you and I came in together, and then there was Straczynski and Ed and those guys, and then Ed cycled out and other people cycled out. But when Matt came in, like Matt, that kind of became my group, right? And and Matt, and I were very close, and we became close inside the retreats. Like, so I now have friends that I got from like Sam Humphries is coming here next week for Thanksgiving. We were friends from the retreat. That's amazing. That's where our friendship started. So I ended up making very close friends with the next, I guess, wave, but it was like a mini wave. It was like,
because they were kind of near our age, weren't they? They weren't
and then Matt and Kelly cycled out, and I was still there. And then they hired Matt Rosenberg and Kelly Thompson, both excellent writers. So now, and Ed Brisson. And so Matt, Ed, and Kelly got replaced by a new Matt, Ed, and Kelly who were in the room. And I go, I should leave. Like there's actually a whole new Matt, Ed, and Kelly. But then there was Jason and Dan Slott's there, and Jason's there. So there's still people from your crew around. So that's when I feel it feels like Saturday Night Live. Now I should be thinking about what I'm going to do next, but I don't want to do it today. So but then it the Joe to Axel transition was like, it went well for me. But like Axel and I weren't always on the same like wavelength, but not in any kind of like poor way, right? So and then I was like, and then honestly for me, there was a couple things like I'm like, Buckley kind of like hit me with, you're always going to be welcome here, which sounded like, but you can go if you want. He did not say that, but he said it in a way that says like, and I was looking around for the next thing to write, and I had kind of done all of it. Right. And that was, but in my heart, it's never like, you never did it perfectly. You never did it like the best. Right. So it's never like, and I was even back writing Daredevil again in Defenders, because I was fascinated that I was 20 years older. Ooh, I'm a different writer. Let's see how that funnels through Matt Murdock. Guess who cares about that? Nobody cares about that but me. But I'm in my weird, I have my head on my ass with my journey. But then it was like, I'm looking around the room and I'm looking, and they're literally struggling to find something for me to write. And I'm like, so.
But you know what though? I mean, you'd been at Marvel 18 years, and I was still shocked when you left. I mean, it's like, the Queen is the only person in our 90s that you were shocked when she died. You were like, what? And like, you leaving Marvel was kind of it was like Kirby leaving in the 70s. You were like, this is somebody who identifies so much with the company. You going to DC was a shock, but also exciting, because
I couldn't appreciate any of that until it was happening. As we were making the choices to leave, and I was meeting with Dan, privately, all of which you would have enjoyed.
Dan DiDio, that is, Dan DiDio. Over those last years I was at Marvel, Jim had reached out one time, and just out of the blue, like Jim, like I don't talk to Jim, like I think I've talked to him like 6 times before this, and he called me up and goes, Brian, you and me, Legion of Superheroes. And I went,
I do want to do that. Like shit. And again, this is all very, very privilegey, but there was rarely anything that was offered to us that was better than Spider-Man.
Yes.
Like you get offers to do cool stuff, but I'm like, not cooler than Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But when Jim goes, you, me, Legion, I'm like, God damn. and so I couldn't even entertain the idea at the time. But I did tell Jim later that was a well-planted seed, because that's when the seed started of me going, oh, what would I do at DC? Because I was the whole time was a Marvel, never even thought of it once.
I was a DC guy, but you were reading Legion, weren't you? You read Giffen and Levitt.
No, I was a Marvel kid and a DC teenager, and that had a lot to do with our favorite creators coming of age and then moving over to DC all at the same time. So there was Byrne on Superman, but there was also Walt and George Perez and, all my favorites. And by the time I was old enough to follow a creator, they were making moves, right? And so I was moving, whatever they're on, I'm on. Whatever. Oh, Dr. Fate. All right, I'm buying Dr. Fate. Like it wasn't that I was complete and trusting to the creators that I was following, and a lot of them were at DC or moving on to independent stuff, and that was helping me, grow as a reader. So when even years before, I'm sure I told you, me and Alex got offered to take over Batman when we were on Daredevil, I was like, I had no thoughts about it. No, I'm in Marvel. Like I wasn't giving it any thought whatsoever. But once Jim hit me with this, I started to think about what would my time at DC be like, and would I be happy there, and would I fit in, and blah blah blah. And so when it was time to have that conversation, I had given it some thought.
But it's funny because the arc of your writing, you start on street level, but then you're doing things like Avengers and then big crossovers and everything, and then you were an entirely different writer by the time you were doing something like X-Men from you were when you're doing Sam and Twitch and coming into Marvel with Jessica Jones and all that kind of thing. So, but I still assumed when you went to DC, I thought it was a no-brainer that you and John Romita, who went over at the same time, would work together and do Batman. It's like the perfect team to do Batman. Like, why did that not happen? Because it just seemed like the most obvious thing in the world,
because it was honestly
maybe
Mark,
too obvious.
It was because it was the most obvious thing. And I've seen you do. I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do. Move. Right?
I guess.
And if something's painfully obvious, I shy away from it. I'm like, then the obvious could also be like very close to the hackiest thing. Right?
I guess it could be predictable, but it's a bit like Scorsese and De Niro teaming up. You assume it's going to be a crime caper.
No, but
I just assumed you guys were heading to do that. Did it ever come on the radar? Did you ever talk to
them?
No,
but we worked together the entire time I was there. So
Batman. For you guys to do Batman.
Well, I'll tell you very honestly, I met Dan DiDio in secret in LA, and he sat down and he already had a plan about how he was going to rearrange the Batman deck for me, because everyone comes to DC and they want to do Batman. I did not. First of all, I had, over my years at Marvel, and I'm sure you have felt that too, like anytime you take a job, it was someone else's job. And sometimes people leave their jobs and move on, and that's a great job for anyone who can go get. And sometimes people are getting removed from their jobs. And I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of, like I've accidentally been part of it in the past, where you can't always see all the pieces in front of you. And obviously you can't control all of it. But in this regard, Batman was very well taken care of, and everyone, like, there was no weak Batman book.
The Batman books are good,
So why would I come in saying I'm here to save them? Like you want, like, no, where's your Daredevil? Like, where's the book that you're struggling with? And honestly, I wanted to write Superman. I didn't. If I wanted to write Batman, I would have found like the thing, right? But I wanted to write Superman, and I was hopeful that there was a place for me to do that. And it would just so happen that they literally were just starting Action Comics 1000, which he had already determined was going to be a new chapter, like that they were going to make a change. So it was really me starting sooner than I had meant to, because it's 1000. How do you, when you got to take a 1000, right? And so that's why, but I will say that Dan's reaction to me wanting Superman over Batman was equal to yours. That he was like, oh, You don't, everyone wants Batman. I'm like, yeah, and I will write Batman too. But I like, I think this is where, like, I'm a little Jewish kid from Cleveland. This is a fucking honor to write Superman. Also, like, I didn't know it at the time, but I was, between the pandemic and stuff that was going on in my life, Superman ended up being an outstanding therapy. Like, if you just have to spend hours a day thinking what would the best person do, you're spending good brain space. You're like, particularly during pandemic, when those darkest days of the pandemic, you're like, oh shit, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen. But I have to think like Superman. Boy, that was great. And so, like, I know you're gonna have Johnny on soon. So Johnny and I and Klaus were on Action Comics together, just literally sitting in the corner doing our best work, while sadly Dan's time at DC and the pandemic were all collapsing at the same time. And we were like, I'm just gonna sit and do my work and write the hell out of Superman and do the best I can. But we were very aware that this era was ending. Like, and as good as like how we talked about that stuff with Joe felt, this also felt, that's a bummer. This isn't going the way it could go, right? And so it was so funny. Like, I was sitting there every day in that malaise of the pandemic, going, remind yourself, you are writing Superman for John Romita fucking Jr. and Klaus Janson. This was the dream. Get to work. Like, it wasn't hard to do it, but some, you're so overwhelmed by the real world that you would have to get there. And also, are they going to pencils down us? I didn't know. So it wasn't the most ideal scenario to be creating, but it was pure creation, because it was like, it was all there. Cut to, I see Johnny at Dragon Con, and I wanted to express to him like how much it meant to me to be doing Superman with him during this, emotionally chaotic time in my life. And it was so wonderful that we got to share that moment. Like, he felt the same, and it was so lovely that we got to share that. So Johnny is someone I've never had even like an off moment with. Like not even like a slight debate over something. It's just great. It's just fantastic. And I was so happy that he felt the same way about it.
That's great.
So, because we've now done Avengers and Superman together. That's amazing.
He's the best. I love Johnny. He's great. And did DC feel different from Marvel? I mean, did it actually? Did it feel like a different company? Yeah. Because I haven't been at DC since I was in my 20s. And I remember it was quite corporate, and it was actually lovely going to Marvel because it was so insane. It was the Wild West. Does DC still feel like a proper business, like?
Well, as you described, we both walked into Marvel when they were in bankruptcy. So we were walking to a place that we were even like, is this really even still a place? Well, this is interesting. I got to be in Marvel after last day of being Marvel. Like, there was a genuine feeling that this could go any way. This is pre-Iron Man, pre-MCU, pre-Blade. Like it's like we weren't sure what was going to happen. And so walking into that and then rebuilding it with Joe, again, we didn't rebuild it, but we were there as it was being rebuilt around us, was very exciting and empowering. And only looking back, you go, wow, how lucky we were that we got to be there for a growth period, right? And so in this regard, when they hired us, what I loved, and I did say this out loud, like, I had once in my childhood, I worked at McDonald's for a while, and then I got a job at Burger King for a little bit. And they do the exact same thing, but do everything different. Like, everything, even how they put the burger on last, and like everything gets done differently to make the exact same product, right? This felt the exact same way to me. Like everything they do is different to make the exact same final product, including senior editors are group editors, but at Marvel, group editors are senior editors. So even like the labels of stuff was different. Their relationship to each other was very different. How they worked together was very different. They're not like everything at Marvel was, always like right on the money. There's, a bunch of weirdos being weird, but they had, I had walked in, a lot of these people had a very long relationship with each other, that they were dealing with. and it felt like I had been invited in. Like, remember we grew up with sitcoms, and like for that last season, they would introduce a little smart ass cousin to try to like pump the ratings.
Scrappy Doo, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Scrappy Doo. Like I felt there was a version of this where I was Scrappy Dooing a little bit, like I'm the snarky cousin who's coming to save the last season, and not going to happen. And it was a bummer because a lot of it was going on around me, and I couldn't. And I certainly wasn't the person to help any of it. And as like Dan was building this 5G, which I was completely all in on, like I was Civil War, like, let's do it, man. Let's make a show. That's yes. And let's do it. And corporately, it was all falling apart. So it was a bummer because I liked them all as individuals. And I had high hopes for a lot of stuff that just wasn't meant to be. It's a bummer. So I got to see like the rise of Marvel, and then not the fall of DC, but of this chapter. DC does continue, and everyone there's doing wonderful work. But I did have a front row seat for a couple of like, and I do feel like Bob Harris sees me as a very bad sign in his life.
But I weirdly think, like, my wife set this up for me. I never know how to work these things. And I think we're about to get cut off at any moment, right? So,
okay. I'm sorry. No.
I think it's 2 hours is the cutoff on this thing for some reason tonight. Okay. I didn't realize the time. So if we do get cut off, don't worry, nobody's died or anything like that, But here's a poignant question to end on. What would you say? I mean, we've been doing this now for over 30 years. Like from we're doing it as teenagers and so on. What would you say is the happiest you've ever been doing the job? Like doing the job, sitting at a desk and doing what we do. Was the period where you actually went to bed and couldn't wait to get up in the morning and do it again? And the people you're working with, but the people you're working with and all that, would you say this is the moment for you? Yeah.
No, I consistently work with people who inspire and empower me, and I'm doing like literally I have a library of creator-owned material coming out through Dark Horse and Abrams and Substack, and all of it is stuff I don't know if I can do, and like, which is thinking like, and so I immediately went, good, I feel that way today. Like
I never do it for the dough. I actually always do it because I really enjoy it, and I've turned down, as I know you have for sure, turned down some really big gigs because I don't like the look of the people I'm going to be working with and everything, So are you in a good place? Are you surrounded by people you really like at the moment? You're enjoying everybody?
I reset up at Dark Horse and that's my home, and that's been a very good space for me. Like as of like Friday, it was like an amazing situation. If I wouldn't have signed a DC, where I am right now is what I would have done. I would have left Marvel, set up my shingles, set up in Hollywood, which we have. You'll find out soon about that, and try to make the most out of the name I've built for myself because of Miles, and now Riri. Couple years, and I still get to do the thing that I was originally going to plan to do, which is very inspired by your move.
And before we go, are you excited about our new book next month, Nightclub, at only $1.99 for a full-size comic?
And how did it? How was the reaction to that retail-wise?
Everybody seems excited. They seem happy, So I think like you can't beat a half-price comic, So we'll see what happens, So like,
no, that's what I mean.
I couldn't end this without a little bit of self-promotion. I had to throw something in there, So.
Mark, I admire your work and your ideas so much. I've told you that over the years. What I love about us is that there's no idea that both of us would have thought of. There's like you and I are dipping from the same well with a lot of similar growth experience. Even the Scottish Jewish thing, there's a lot of Venn diagrams, similarities to how we were raised and our relationship to the stuff. And we look at the culture and we see completely different things. Even when we were working on Civil War, what I wanted to write and what you wanted to write were so different.
It never competes.
I love that about us. Like there was
Bill James said that I'm like a guy in a helicopter watching a scene, in a bit, and a Michael Bay kind of way, but you're down on the ground talking to the people and finding out what they think of it and everything. And I think that sums us up quite well, you know, which was so weird when we were co-writing, because it was so bizarre, wasn't it? We couldn't have been more different. But, you know, Brian, I love you. I've known you for over 20 years. It's always been great. And I look forward to actually seeing you in person soon, hopefully at a convention.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad we did this.
I'm glad we got to the end of the 2 hours without this cutting out as well. I'm so pleased, because this is a good one. Yeah.
You're happy? This is what you wanted?
Fantastic.
All right, good, bud. All right, listen, call me anytime you need me. I'm here.
Great.
Okay.
All the best then, Brian.
Have a good one.
Don't forget, that's Magic Order, American Jesus and Prodigy out in November. Coming in January, Nemesis Reloaded with art by Jorge Jimenez. In December, for only $1.99, Nightclub by me and Juan Ramirez. It's going to be brilliant. $1.99, can you believe it?